Hello, welcome to the High Quality Fun Podcast. Today we talk to Anna and Kristy about how dog sledding took them from Wisconsin to Alaska, where they have collectively competed in the Iditarod 26 times. We talk about the love they have for each of their dogs and the ebbs and flows that go into mushing in the unforgiving climate of Alaska as they prepare for this year's race. Stay tuned, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Stumbled onto your account just kind of looking at the Iditarod and saw that you guys have been doing some races, been following you to, through a race you recently did. We kind of talked a little bit yesterday, and I got to hear a little bit of your backstory. It's kind of cool that you guys are from Wisconsin, where I'm from Michigan. So we were very close to each other in proximity when I went to college up in the Upper Peninsula. To start off, why don't you guys tell us how you got from Wisconsin all the way out to Alaska and got into this dog sled racing thing?
Thanks for having us. My name's Kristy and this is Anna, and together we own and operate Single Sled Dog Racing. And we were born and raised in northern Wisconsin, and our neighbor, and by neighbor in the Midwest, she was 5 miles away from us, had sled dogs, and we thought that'd be a fun thing to kind of get into when we were growing up. The movie Iron Will had just came out, and we were super into that. Our veterinarian had some sled dogs and gave us our first ride. So
our guidance counselor at school had a few sled dogs. Yeah, so it was around.
Yeah, and there's some middle distance races in the Midwest, so it's not only an Alaskan sport, even though it's Alaska state sport.
Yeah, I know that up in my college they had the Copper Dog 150. I don't know what all is in Wisconsin, but I assume that your mentor, or whatever you called her, did you say counselor or mentor? She probably ran
was
that race.
Our friend and mentor. Yeah.
Okay. But keep going. I just wanted to throw that in there.
Oh yeah. Like Kristy mentioned, Wisconsin has a lot of sprint racing, such as short and fast racing, and then Minnesota and Michigan each have some longer distance races that are like the Bear Grease, which is up to like around 350 miles.
More of a marathon.
More of a marathon, yeah. And then like the car 150 miles, and like also in the UP they have the UP 200, which is a 200-mile race, and a few other things. The Can-Am over on the East Coast and stuff. And yeah, and then over on the west side in the lower 48, Montana has their Race to the Sky and Sealy Lake. So there's that there. But then Alaska feels like if you want to have the most opportunities for racing and to compete against a lot of people and just to see some really amazing country, Alaska's like, the mecca of mushing, I would say.
And home to the ultra marathon of dog mushing, which is the Iditarod, and that's 1,000 miles long. And there used to be one other race called Yukon Quest that was also 1,000 miles long, and that was it went from Alaska and into Canada, but I'd like to joke and say that Alaska and Canada kind of got a divorce with that race, and they have joint custody of the race. So they each have their own individual races, one in Alaska and one in Canada now. Hopefully they can work things out and bring that one back, because that was also a very epic event.
Yeah, but how we ended up in Alaska is just after high school, we joined the Army National Guard, and we got to do a lot there. We went, our unit got activated and that kind of stuff. And then after we were done with all that, we didn't know what to do. So we went to University of Wisconsin River Falls for a few semesters, but didn't know what we wanted to do. But then kind of always felt ourselves being drawn back to mushing. And after kind of looking around of places that were hiring handlers, and a handler is someone who like assists a musher in their work and training and taking care of the dogs, handling the dogs. That's kind of where that term came from. So we looked at different places and kennels that were looking for helpers. And so we kind of told our mom and dad, we're going to go to Alaska. And they're like, whoa, slow down a little bit. You've never been there, and that kind of stuff. So then, like, is there's some place you could find to stay stateside? We looked at a couple places in the Michigan area, but still we're like, oh, what do we do? And we're still looking to make a little money or something. So we ended up working for a touring business in, of all places, California. And at the ski resorts there, they would give sled dog rides. So we gave sled dog rides there. And it was a fun way to share the sport with people, but it just left you wanting more. Just like you weren't satisfied with only going like 4 miles at a time. And then we started to kind of fan out to look for more from there.
You hadn't gone to Alaska at this point? You kind of said this is where we have to be if we want to really get into this?
Yeah, we kind of felt that way. The first time I ever went to Alaska I was with the company we were working for, and they needed to buy more dogs. And I got the opportunity to go up with the owner to buy and take care of the dogs that they were purchasing. And we met Dean Osmar, and he won the Iditarod in 1984, and he was watching me work with the dogs. We got to run the dogs that day. He's like, I really like how you are with the dogs. He's like, would you be interested in, coming up to Alaska and doing this for real? And I was like, oh my gosh. And I pretty much turned to my then employer and said, I quit. And then at the time, it was in the summer, Anna and I were living in a tent in the Sierra Nevada mountains, working at a horse ranch. And that's what we did in the summer, horses in the summer and dogs in the winter. It was a pretty great gig for 2 young girls. So
yeah, people love the outdoors.
Yeah, so pretty much got back to Alaska and told Anna, it's like, hey, I got a job for us. We're moving to Alaska. And Anna was all on board. She's like, this sounds perfect. So we packed up everything we owned on our backs and moved up to Alaska with a stranger that I had met all of 2 hours. So our mom was a little bit like, oh, wow, you're moving to Alaska, a place that, well, Anna's never been. Nobody up there to work and live in the middle of nowhere in Alaska. Okay. But it all worked out great, and Dean and his wife Sarah were super good to us and gave us a lot of amazing opportunities, and it just built the foundation for what we do and what we are today.
When you went up there, was it in the winter or summer, or was it long days or long nights? I assume winter if you're going up there to help out with the dogs.
No, it was actually in the summertime, and we can run the dogs on ATV 4-wheelers, and we actually ran them along the Cook Inlet near the ocean in the sand. So
on the beach.
Yeah. And Alaska doesn't, in that neck of the woods, didn't get very warm. I mean, a summer day might be high 60s and maybe even low 70s. So the dogs can run short distances and pull an ATV 4-wheeler. So that was my exposure to Alaska for the first time, was in the summer. And I was, with the daylight, thought it was amazing. At 6 o'clock at night when the news came on, I thought it was, or 10 o'clock when the news came on, I thought it was 6 o'clock. And yeah, you just wanted to stay up all night doing anything and everything because it was still daylight.
Yeah, and then when Kristy came back to get me, we finished our stint at the horse stable and then packed up all our stuff and came up in the beginning of October. And we're still training dogs in the 4-wheels and that kind of thing. And growing up in the Midwest, no mountains. And it's just to be like pin dropped with mountains surrounding you and the ocean was right there. Just everything is just gorgeous. It's like, wow, I can't believe that we're in Alaska, we're here and that kind of thing. So it's just really just a whirlwind kind of experience and just dropped into it. And it's been awesome. Obviously we stayed.
I think for people, it's either you love it and you have this desire, like, I gotta be here, or it's like, no, not for me. There's no, like, I feel like in between. It's like, you like it or you don't.
Yeah, I kind of hinted at this when we talked yesterday, but we went up there for a wedding. There's actually a couple that they live up the road from us, and they said it was cheaper to get married in Alaska versus here. And we're like, well, yeah, screw it. We might as well go. We've never been to Alaska. But the issue, quote unquote issue, is that we have 2 kids under 3 and we've never taken a plane. We tried to travel with them. We try to not let that discomfort cause us problems. They did pretty good. We flew out there and it was gorgeous. It was I think it was August, so we were still in like the sunny time, 60s like you were saying. But yeah, it's just like compared to Michigan, compared to Wisconsin, where there's no mountains or anything, you just have these gorgeous mountain backdrops. We did halibut fishing. We did the Alaskan Railroad to kind of get around. Went up to Denali, saw a bunch of moose. What was the last thing we did? Oh, we did a fjords tour, so we got to take the boat out, and yeah, it was cool. I would have to see it in the winter because we were talking to some of the halibut guys, and they're saying, yeah, we get the hell out of here. What is the halibut city called?
Homer?
Yeah, Homer. The place pretty much shuts down in the winter, and like everyone just uproots. And I think he went and did skiing or something during that time. But yeah, it was gorgeous, and I totally get the draw to it. I could see a lot of people just landing there and never wanting to leave again. Yeah, I wanted to actually get into this. You mentioned the four-wheeling. I was watching some of your videos yesterday, and I thought that was something worth getting into with our listeners. So in the summer, or winter, you have your dog sled that you can actually hook up with your brakes and everything. And then in the summer, you still have to train all these dogs so you can race, right? And you just hook it to a four-wheeler that you toss in neutral. Is that kind of the premise behind it?
Yeah, they don't run our training. I think our serious training probably runs from August to April, and we are stuck on the four-wheeler because it's not my favorite place to be, but on the four-wheelers all summer, and we do maybe two to three runs a week with the dogs in the summer. It's all based on what the temperatures are, and they pull us on the four-wheelers, and yeah, it's put it in neutral, and they pull us. It's a great way to get the dogs out running until we get snow. And I think years ago, it was a real game changer when somebody decided, well, let's, not just the wheeled carts, but be able to have them on the four-wheeler. You can run much bigger teams, longer distances, different places. So yeah, it's a mandatory piece of equipment if you're going to race and train a long distance dog team.
Yeah, and it all looks and feels the same as far as like it's just take away the sled and add four-wheeler. So the dogs are still set up the same way, and it's a great way to start working with your young leaders and getting handling and hooking up and harnessing experience on your youngest dogs and that kind of thing. And just like, yeah, Kristy said, to start to get them in shape, because kind of like kids have days, the summer off, our dogs kind of have the summer off. There's a lot of one-on-one stuff. We take dogs hiking and that kind of thing. But like, yeah, serious training starts in August.
And it's also not unusual to put a team of dogs on a snowmobile and like try to multitask and groom your trail at the same time, and then have a large team of dogs on the snowmobile to find the trail and kind of set the track, and then pull that machine behind the whole team. And then also there's a few roads in Alaska that are closed in the winter, and then when they get just enough snow, we hook dogs to the front of vehicles like pickup trucks and have 24 or something. And given they're not pulling a 1-ton truck, you have to, feather the gas and keep in a low gear and help them along. But mushers are very resourceful when it comes to training their dogs and getting the miles on them that the dogs need. And the dogs love it. And they just want to pull and run. They don't care what you put a spaceship behind them. If they pull it, they try to do it.
I don't know anything about these sleds. Is there a steering mechanism to it? Like, I know you can brake and everything, but you're really relying on the dogs to steer everything. So when you're on that four-wheeler, you just kind of let the handles do their own thing, or use it to guide them?
You have to, well, they're on voice command. So to turn left, we say ha, and to turn right, we say G. To keep going, we say straight ahead, and that kind of thing. But you do have to steer the four-wheeler because it's just tied to the front of the frame of the four-wheeler. So you have to steer it with your hands like that. But with the sled, you're driving the sled as far as you're using your weight and your legs and applying brake at certain times to help guide it and that kind of thing. So you're not just standing back there looking at the Alaskan scenery. You are driving the sled. You're actively driving it. And every person has tipped their sled over. And when you do tip the sled over, you drag. The dogs don't necessarily stop. And so, are you okay? You tipped over. They drag you. And then you have to struggle to find your snow hookers, which is like an anchor to stop you, and stop them and flip your sled up and then continue to keep going. And if you, in the event, let go of your sled.
Because that's kind of like rule number one, never let go of your sled.
Yeah.
But if you're, going 12 miles an hour towards a tree and there's nothing you can do, yeah, you should let go.
Yeah, sometimes it just, you're trying and you just accidentally, you're trying to drive it, you tip over, you're dragging, you're doing the best you can. And if you do lose it, the dogs will leave you. They just keep going.
Yeah, and all they find is like, oh, that got a lot easier, and they just go faster.
Yeah. So then you're walking down the trail because you can never run to catch them. So you walk down the trail, and the sled, usually the snow hooks will, bounce around and then they'll anchor and then you'll get to the team. But they just love doing what they do, so they'll leave you behind.
That's hilarious. So when you got there, were you working for this racer that you met? And then how did you go from doing that to actually opening your own racing kennel? Is that the right term for it?
Yeah, I call it a racing kennel. It was a long journey, and we took the opportunity to work for and learn from several different mushers, because there's 1,000 different ways to operate a kennel, and everybody does things a little bit differently. So we were taking little tidbits from everyone we worked for and everyone we met, and kind of putting that in the memory bank for when. And Anna and I would always say, it's just, when we have our own dogs, we're going to do it this way, and we'll try this and stuff like that. So we finally got to that point where we got a few dogs. Dean actually gave us a wonderful opportunity, and it's a really funny story. Dean is notorious for doing pranks and making bets. So him and Anna ended up having a bet of when Iditarod started, and Iditarod always starts in the first weekend of March, always, except on one occasion it started at the last weekend of February because it was coinciding with the basketball tournament up in Nome. And Anna had said that it started on our birthday, and Dean's like, well, when's your birthday? And Anna's like, well, February 24th. And he's like, no, that can't be, because it always starts the first weekend of March. So they bantered back and forth a little bit, and he's like, okay, let's make a bet. And I forget what Dean wanted if he would have won.
He was made a simple side. He's like, I just want you have to, make me hot chocolate and stuff like that. I was
yeah, and I was like, oh, Anna's like, okay, deal, I'll buy you a cup of coffee. And he's like, okay, and if you win, Anna's like, I want a dog. And Dean's kind of eyes got big, but at the same time being very arrogant, he's like, deal, because he knew he was right. So they called Rick Swenson, and Rick Swenson won the Iditarod 4 times, and is basically a history book about the race. And so they called Rick Swenson. He answered, and he's like, Rick, it's Dean. He's like, got a question for you. He's like, what year did Iditarod start in February? And I forget the year. I think it was like
70 something.
Yeah, 76 or something. He's like, oh, it started in this because of the basketball tournament. And Dean basically hung up on Rick at that point because he was wrong. And he looked over at Anna, and his eyes got kind of small. He's like, which dog? And Anna was like, oh, got real excited and talking 100 miles an hour about her favorite dog and stuff like that. She's like, okay, here's what we're gonna do. He's like, I'm gonna give you a pregnant female, and you can have pick of that litter, and you can raise the puppy. So he gave us a pregnant female that spring. He bred one to Anna's favorite dog, and which was a really good breeding. We got to raise a litter of puppies, and then we got to pick a dog to keep out of there. So, and we still have him today. He's going to be 16 years old, and his name is Jonah, and he was a phenomenal dog. Yeah, he is a phenomenal dog. He did multiple Iditarods with me, won races with us, Yukon Quest, did qualifiers with us to get to Iditarod. So he's a real awesome prize in that event.
That's great. Was that kind of the kickoff to once you got that dog? Did that kind of set the wheels in motion to opening the kennel?
Yeah, that was our first dog that we called our own, and then working with other kennels, we it's like a lot of times we end up getting like pups, because I mean the value of sled dogs change as they learn things. So then you'll have pups, their price goes off of, well, what's their bloodline, how did their parents do, how did their grandparents do, that kind of thing. So then you that's how much this is, and then it goes up from there as like, well, this dog it has finished 4 300-mile races, or this dog has finished the Iditarod, this dog is a lead dog. Lead dogs are always the most expensive, and the price goes up. So then a lot of times, because we didn't have a whole lot, and it's an expensive sport, we were getting young dogs and other people's kind of kickbacks. Like we got a couple older dogs that were experienced, but maybe not so much like high quality racers to help the other ones learn and that kind of thing. So we slowly started to build from there, and now we have 34 dogs.
That's wild. And that's pretty much what you do full time now, right? You manage that. Are they all your dogs, or are you actually housing dogs?
Yeah, all 34 that we have. Oh, yeah, all 34 that we have are our dogs. And it is a full-time job, just like a farmer or a rancher. Mm-hmm. Anyone who owns a kennel of multiple animals of any kind, it is a full-time job, whether it's making you earnings or not, the animals always come first. They're the first thing that get taken care of with feeding and cleaning and care and attention, and then your rest of your life comes second. So the mushing for us really, not for many people, is a money making sport. So we do supplement with other work to get by with things. So we do a lot of seasonal work. So in the summer we do construction and landscaping and that kind of thing, which works out great with the building season in Alaska, and for especially like landscaping, and that kind of shuts down in October because you can't push frozen ground so well with a dozer and that kind of thing. So it's great because that's when things are getting super busy training the dogs, and it's hard for just the two of us to maintain all the animal care and all the training while maintaining a full-time job. We do some part-time work helping out another kennel and that kind of thing, but otherwise the dogs are a full-time job.
Yeah, 34 dogs. I can't even imagine. I got one dog and 2 kids, and it's a full-time gig.
I'll take dogs over kids.
Just out of curiosity, like, is it mostly landscaping that you do? When you say construction, what do you work on? I asked because we built this house and we did like 70% of the work ourselves. Chelsea, my wife, she was kind of the planner. She was pregnant at the time, just kind of making the schedule, making sure we had everything lined up. And I was like grunt on YouTube trying to figure out how the hell to wire a house and how to do plumbing and everything. And that was very rewarding, but so much work.
Yeah, we started out our summer gigs. Well, it was commercial fishing and building. So we were just general laborers on a crew, framing and everything like that. But now we've kind of leaned towards more doing the kind of foundation work when we for landscaping, clearing land to have to build a house, and then installing a lawn on existing buildings. So that's kind of
driveways, like you said, foundations. And
that's more of the work with dirt now instead of wood.
We paid someone to do the excavation to kind of shape the land, but we did all of the foundation and we hired out the rough. So it seems like you guys are doing a lot of the stuff that we actually avoided. Yeah, very cool. And then I assume that the Iditarod was always something that you wanted to do. Like when did you first dive into that? And just because I know nothing about this event, I know it's like 1,000 miles. Can you maybe give us the short and sweet of what this event is? And then maybe we can talk into, everything that went into racing it. I know you guys have also done it, 17 times, 12 times?
Yeah, I've done it 12 times and Kristy's done it 14 times.
Okay. Man, that's wild.
Yeah.
So the Iditarod started in 1974, and it's a 1,000-mile race that goes from Anchorage to Nome. And they say it is to honor the serum run, which was for the diphtheria epidemic. But in all reality, it was to preserve the sled dog. Society was progressing in a way that mushers were getting squeezed out of places in Alaska and being replaced by the snow machine. And Joe Reddington came up with the idea for this epic race to, preserve the sled dog and keep that breed around and that way of life around. And it's still very prevalent today up here in Alaska. They say it's 1,049 miles long, and in actuality, it varies. It's usually like 985 to 995 miles long, depending on snow conditions, ice conditions on the Bering Sea, and winter in general. So and then there's also a northern route and a southern route on odd and even years. But for the most part, that's what the Iditarod is. You start with 16 dogs, and whoever gets to know them first wins.
Yeah, it's neat for our sport. It doesn't matter what gender you are. We're all on the same playing field. There's no women's division. There's no men's division. It's whoever has the best dog team is going to get to know it first.
There's no age group division.
Yep, it doesn't matter. Rookies are against people that have run it for 20 years, and it's just, it's pretty old fashioned that way.
That's cool. Is it? I assume there's like tiered launches too. You go every hour or something like that.
Yep, it's 2-minute intervals, and then there's 3 areas of mandatory rest that you have to take. And one of them is a full 24 hours. You have to stop someplace on the, anywhere on the trail at a checkpoint. You have to take an 8-hour rest in White Mountain, the second to the last checkpoint. And then you get to choose to take another 8-hour rest anywhere you want on the Yukon River. You cannot run this race without adding more rest than the mandatory rest. So you're stopping in these other checkpoints or stopping and camping along on the trail to give the dogs the rest that they need.
And are those, each of those checkpoints, are they, is it like a base? You can go in there, they have all the amenities that you need for you and the dog, or is it just like a Jack in the Woods?
Yeah, most of them are villages in
Okay.
the interior of Alaska, and there's a couple checkpoints that are just kind of pop-up checkpoints, like for example, Iditarod and Cripple. They're just an Eagle Island. And then the checkpoint of Ophir is just someone's hunting camp. So they kind of only exist during the race, but our supplies are sent out 2 weeks before the race starts. So we'll send out around 2,000 pounds of dog food and things like that. So, and they're distributed among the checkpoints through Iditarod's Air Force. And so those things are there when you get to the checkpoint, but and then there's veterinary at every checkpoint. There's race marshal and all that kind of thing at each checkpoint. But the musher takes care of their team. There is no help taking care of the team. No pit crew. Nobody's helping you feed and bed them down and massage and take care of feet and booties and cook for them. It's that one musher's doing everything for their team.
And there are no roads to Nome. The only way you can get to Nome is by dog team in the winter, fly, or snowmobile in the winter. And then there's a handful of people that ride the fat tire snow bikes or ski to Nome. But that's a different kind of race.
Yeah, the distance between checkpoints, depending how they route it, it can be as short as like, what's the shortest distance? A couple of them, like 20 miles, or it can be as far as like 90.
And there's about 20 checkpoints along the race.
And now you guys are racing these at the same time. You have enough dogs that you can actually divvy them up and do the race. I assume you aren't allowed to even help each other out.
Rules say that mushers can help other mushers, but we'll check in with each other, say how you're doing, that kind of thing. But we both are doing our own management of our team.
Okay, there has to be some competitive spirit between you two on that too, I assume. You trying to beat each other's ass?
No, I don't think so. We have, entered the race in the same year and not traveled the trail together, but it's definitely way more fun to do it together.
Yeah, because we raise and train all of the dogs together. I'm interested in how Kristy's team is doing just as much as the team I'm driving. Right. So the dogs aren't just like a snowmobile. It's like, how's it running kind of thing. You love that dog. You love that team. And obviously you have a family member driving them and you love that person. So there's a huge invested interest in just how is it going and that kind of thing. And so as far as being competitive, you just want each of us to have a great race. But when it comes down to, who's beating who, it's really just, we both take pride in it because they're our dogs.
Yeah. And even we've been asked this before, even it's like, well, what if, it was right there on Front Street coming down to the finish line and you're neck and neck and you're like, you're going to hold hands across the finish line. We're like, no, but we're not going to like throw down the gauntlet and, forget the fact that we're sisters at that point. Both of us, without communicating, will look at each other and quickly think back of the last, 990 miles and think, who earned this? Whose team led the most? Who was there for the other person, emotionally support, or who actually deserves to win this? And even if like my team was a little bit faster at that point, and if I were to look back and be like, man, Anna and her lead dog Drax led through that storm, and I don't think I would have made it through without her in front that way, I would get on my brake and make sure that she would win the race. So that's how we would handle something like that.
I love it. Yeah. After 1,000 miles or something like that, I feel like
it is really crazy. Sorry to interrupt, but
no, you're good.
The race came down to 1 second. Can you imagine racing over 10, 12 days and it comes down to beating someone in 1 second.
Yeah.
It's been that close before. And they actually had to make the choice that whether it was the person and their sled that crossed the finish line or the lead dog that crossed the finish line first. And it's all came down to whoever's lead dog nose crossed the finish line first won the race. So that was a very exciting.
They kind of went to, well, with horse racing, it's whichever horse's nose crosses the line first. So they're like, that's what we do.
I think it's the same with race cars too.
Oh, okay.
I'm just basing this off of like whatever race movies I've seen. I don't actually know. Yeah, so I want to dive into like an actual Iditarod race. Like, how many days does it normally take you? What are you guys doing during the day? How much are you like? What's your sleep routine? What's your eating routine? I'm just like curious about the logistics of the whole event day after day.
Yeah, it's a long time to have your mind in the mindset of racing, because the people finish in as short as 8 days and 20 hours, or all the way up to like 14 days and 20 hours. So there's a big span of ability in that range. Kristy and I have finished right around, it takes us about 10 days when we've been running it. And that's the whole time clock. It counts your stop time and everything like that. That's how long it took you. So you're traveling over 100 miles a day, or right around 100 miles a day. And as far as you have a routine. Dogs love routine. So if you're consistent in that, they rest quicker, they rest easier, and that kind of thing. So as you're running and going, you might run around about 6 hours, and then you'll probably maybe rest for like 4 hours, depending on how your schedule's laid out. And you feel free to jump in anytime. And as far as your sleep routine, we are constantly sleep deprived when we're racing dogs, because your number one is to take care of them, and then last is whatever the musher gets to do. And if you want to remain competitive, then you can't take a 4-hour nap at every checkpoint. You got to keep moving if you want to keep up with the front. And so you might get like a 45-minute nap when you stop for that 4 hours with the dogs. So you might run like I said, about 6 hours, and you may stop for 4 hours. So you get less than an hour nap, because the rest of your time is caring for them, cooking for them, repacking your sled, and getting ready to go. So you're always sleep deprived. You hallucinate and all that kind of stuff. And as far as like eating for the dogs around the trail, where you cook for them. So we have a cook pot that will boil water, melt snow, get them a hot meal and that kind of thing. And then you can throw into that boiling water, like, maybe a vacuum sealed burrito or something like that, which sometimes is good. Other times you're just eating quick things, like having, smoked salmon or trail mix or something like that. A lot of that stuff is what we eat, is what you can eat when it's frozen. But yeah, so much of your routine just goes off of taking care of the dogs first.
And then can you maybe explain the sled itself? I don't know like all the mechanisms on it. What do you have in there storage wise? Is there multiple pockets and stuff like you'd have on like a backpacking backpack, or how much does it weigh? I don't know.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to put it. It's kind of like a giant backpack. And the sleds evolved over the years to where it actually has a seat where you can sit down on it. And I was opposed to that idea for the longest time. Number one, they nicknamed it the old man sled. And then number two, I thought that would encourage laziness, because we are really active on the back of the sled, not only from steering and driving the sled, but we call it pedaling. So you push it like a skateboard to help the dog team. And then when your legs get tired from running and pedaling, we carry ski poles with us, and you, like your Nordic skiing, you push with a ski pole. So you're trying to help the dog team not work so hard. And I think the dogs work harder knowing that you're helping them. They appreciate that. And like I said, oppose the idea of the sled, because I thought it was encourage laziness, but on the contrary, it did not. It actually helped you feel more rested when you got to the checkpoint, because if you could sit down and just get off your feet for 5 minutes and just take a little bit of a break, stretch a little bit, and then get back into it, you feel much better arriving at the checkpoint. So that's really handy with that kind of sled. And the other thing is, it helps distribute the weight and how you pack your sled. Instead of having everything up front of you like a shopping cart, you have another compartment behind you like a trunk where you can store more things and just easier to get to, easier to sort and find gear. And it was just, I wish I would have got onto the old man sled sooner than I did. And inside the sled, we carry mandatory gear. There's a list of stuff you have to have with you at all times. And you have to have the ability to carry dogs too. Sometimes if you're running and a dog doesn't look like they're moving quite right, or if they get sick or tired, you need to be able to carry the dogs with you. So there's a compartment in the sled for that in case you kind of have to be I don't want to call it an ambulance, but I have a car seat for the dog.
Yeah, the sleds have evolved a lot from the traditional sleds were made of like all wood with a plastic screw to the bottom of the runners, which is like the ski part. And they've evolved as, technology has evolved. These days, there's hardly a piece of wood on a dog sled. A lot of them have aluminum runners with quick change plastic. You slide it on, has a dovetail joint. You change the plastic out just like you wax a ski for different temperatures. There's different colors of plastic that do better in different snow surface conditions. And then there's, like I said, aluminum runners. There's high molecular weight plastic on there that is strong, and carbon fiber things, just really going for lightweight. And when you ask about how much a sled weighs, like a heavy sled will weigh probably like 65 pounds. That's heavy. But then these lightweight racing sleds that we have now are probably about 35 pounds.
And then our mandatory gear probably is about 100 pounds
or so. Yeah.
100 to 200 pounds. It depends on the distances between checkpoints and how much like fuel you need to carry for the dogs. And by fuel, I mean dog food.
So they're really carrying anything from like 250 to 300 pounds at any given time. Or
yep.
pull.
And plus the weight of the musher on there.
Do they have saddlebags too? Like just for little things?
No, the dogs have a lot of clothes though. They have their harnesses. They all have booties. They have coats. Sometimes they wear these leggings, and sometimes they'll wear like a ruff around their waist to help to keep the cold air off of their flanks. There's that thin skin on their legs. So they have a lot of things that they wear, but they don't carry their stuff.
Okay. No, that's great. Yeah, so we're coming up towards the end of the time, but I want to leave these last 15 minutes just for you guys to tell any like particularly funny or strugglesome stories that you guys have. I'm sure you have a handbag full of stories that you always like to tell when you reflect on this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's funny, our story, and it's Anna and I are the only twins and the only sisters who have run Iditarod. That's one of our little claim to fames there. But when we first came up to Alaska, as we had mentioned earlier, we were living in California and moving up here. We flew up to Alaska, and we had it arranged to where Anna was going to go up there first and kind of get the compound established and start training the dogs, and I was going to arrive later. Well, circumstances changed. The ticket was already bought, and I decided, and Anna and I decided together that, okay, Kristy, you're going to go up there first. And the ticket was already bought. We're like, you can see where this is going. Let's just switch IDs. So when I flew up there, I flew up as Anna, and Anna stayed down as me. And for, I think, a couple months until Anna came up there, and it worked out just fine. Super easy. But it was funny, one day Anna called me. She's like, well, sorry about that, but you got a ticket today. I got pulled over. And I was like, what did I do? How many license are off, points are off my license? Like, I just had an expired license plate. I hadn't gotten my sticker put on there yet. I was like, okay, great. So I thought that was funny that we had switched to come up here. And there's other twin shenanigans stories. Like, our voices are very similar, as you can hear in this podcast, and our dog teams sometimes can't differentiate between who's calling what command. So we've been passing each other before and calling different commands, and our dog teams are almost zigzagging up front of each other because they're not quite sure who to listen to at that point.
Yeah, and recently this fall we were on a training run. Kristy and I have a lot of gear that's similar. Like we have the same color vest, the same pants, same everything. And we were gearing up to go, and I grabbed my phone. Kristy grabbed her phone so we could communicate out there and that kind of stuff. And we're out running. And then like I picked up my phone and I was calling me, and I was like, what is this? And it was, but oh, Kristy's calling me on my phone. It's just funny thing because like on our wallpaper on our phones, we both have a team picture of a dog team and stuff. So things like that is funny. And all of our dogs are microchipped, so you can scan them and like a number comes up to identify each dog, because in Iditarod you cannot switch dogs. Once you start with 16, that's all you get. So then the vets can scan to make sure, okay, this dog has not been switched out. It matches with their name and their number and everything like that. So we'll always joke with kids, and we talk at schools and like, yeah, we got a microchip too, so we can't switch places out there and we're mushing. But I mean, as far as like, we've encountered so many extreme conditions out mushing. We've been in as cold as 65 below zero ambient temperature. We've been mushing in the rain. You'll cross open water and that kind of thing. So we've come across wildlife. Moose are like, everybody always, oh, you see any bears when you're out mushing? It's like, we have seen them, but they're kind of hibernating, so they're not really a big deal. And wolves are around, but they're not like, hunting you or anything like that. But moose are like the scariest animal you can come across because they will stomp you. They don't care. They are mean. So, as far as wildlife encounters, we've encountered them. And it's just, Alaska is a wild place, and it's been really, really cool what we've been able to do up here with dogs.
And we get asked like, why do you mush dogs? It sounds awful. You don't get to sleep. You're out there in the bitter cold. You're working all the time. You're like struggling from paycheck to paycheck to give the highest quality care to these dogs. And you always come second. If they need something, they're going to get it. And they eat king salmon, you eat top ramen. Why do you even do this? It sounds almost miserable. And I'm not going to lie. There's been times I've been out there and I've said, I hate this.
Yeah.
But and you can go for 10 days in the most wicked and miserable conditions. But there's so much beauty out there at the same time. And when you're getting to the finish line, it's a crazy experience and a crazy thing to be thinking, well, next year when I do this, you totally forgot about all the hell that you just went through, and all that's ringing in your ears is the beauty and the pictures that you can't get out of your mind, is how amazing your dogs are and what a phenomenal experience that was. So I imagine it's something like childbirth. It's just like, wasn't that the most painful thing you've ever been through? But look what I got out of it. So it's an amazing experience. If anybody gets the opportunity just to try it, even if it is with a tour company, I highly recommend it. The dogs are high octane, full energy, and motivating. It's so much fun.
Man, I kind of want to just end it there with all that passion. I mean, that's kind of like what I'm trying to capture with this whole podcast thing is find those stories, find the sports where people are doing these things where, they might be a little bit cuckoo in the head going and doing this. I think you guys, I was telling you about it, type 2 fun. You guys said this is insane enough. It's type 3 fun.
Yeah.
No, I'm also glad you brought up the wildlife thing, because that was something I wanted to mention, because I'm sure you've seen stuff that no one in the world will ever see, just like being in these trails that no one ever touches and stuff like that.
Yeah, and even though we've both run the Iditarod over a dozen times, the same trail, it's never the same. It's always a different experience, whether whatever Mother Nature's throwing at you or that kind of thing. We've never driven the same dog team in a race twice. It's always changing positions, just with that kind of thing. And yeah, so it's, even though it's the same race, it's never the same.
I love it. Do you want to, while we wrap up, just plug your guys' website, anything you guys want, any final thoughts before we say goodbye?
Oh, sure. Yeah. We have an Instagram account at Seeing Double Sled Dog Racing, and it's a lot of dog pictures. So if you love dogs, you'll see a lot of fun stuff there. And we try to make it a little educational, so you can see like what we're doing when we're cutting thousands of pounds of meat for the dogs to eat, why we do what we do, and that kind of thing, and race preparations and stuff like that. And we update it year round. So it's, even though it's summertime and we're not running dogs every day, it's still a lot of dog stuff. And then we have a website, which is www.seeingdoublesleddogracing.com. And that is, like a website with lots of dog pictures still and lots of information, our background and our sponsors.
And our other sister, Kat, does a phenomenal job with the blog every year while we're out on the trail for Iditarod, with lots of good inside information and experiences that you won't get by following the race any other way. So that's really a cool way to follow. And there's also some ways that you can support the dogs on the teams if you want to meet the dogs. Lots of good information there. Yeah, and then we have a Facebook athlete page for Seeing Double Sled Dog Racing as well.
Yeah, I'll be sure to tag a lot of that whenever we release this and do the post. Your site's pretty impressive. I'm kind of glad that we didn't record yesterday because I got to dive in and look at all the content. You guys got a lot of good stuff on there. And then
all that goes to our sister Kat. She manages the website because I can't wrap my brain around stuff like that. I don't have time. So she does a phenomenal job with all that. She'd be thrilled to hear that.
That's great. Be sure to compliment her for me. And then I guess final thing, if you guys do, listeners, if you do follow them on Instagram, Anna just did the Kinnick, and you were posting stuff the entire time. It was really cool to just see even just the dogs running through the trails, everything, them resting, whatever. I was getting a little amped up to record this because that was before I kind of followed a race along. Well, yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for coming on. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and we'll see what the listeners have to say.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the High Quality Fun podcast. If you guys enjoyed this show, please give us a follow. And if you have a good story or just want to say hi, feel free to reach out to us on Instagram or YouTube. Thanks for listening.